I was probably a little surprised by, and maybe I shouldn't have been, the reaction to having a female CEO in fintech. And maybe, again, I'd taken it for granted that wasn't such a big deal anymore. But it clearly was.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of In Check with Fintech. On this episode, we have the pleasure of being joined by Emma Hagan, Chief Executive Officer of ClearBank UK at their London headquarters. Emma is responsible for overseeing all aspects of ClearBank's operations in the UK and further strengthening the bank's position in the UK market. She brings over 20 years of experience in commercial and corporate banking in both first and second lines of defense. Enjoy listening.
I'll start with the kind of rapid fire questions or the CEO dilemmas. My marketing team came up with this. So there's a few ones in there which made me chuckle a little bit. But let's start with those just to have kind of a bit of a conversation starter. And then we go from there to kind of ease in and have ourselves warm up. So the first one is, would you rather have the best risk team in fintech, but no compliance? Or, close to your heart this one, or the best compliance team, but no risk team?
Best risk team, but no compliance.
Why?
Because risk should cover all things, including compliance.
Nice, smart. Number two, be forced to personally reply to every single complaint on X, or have all the ClearBank's marketing videos made by TikTok influencers with zero banking experience.
TikTok influencers.
Interesting. Number three, have an AI-powered executive team making all risk and compliance decisions, so all automated, or replace customer support with AI that is 100% accurate but has the personality of a robot.
I am going with the robot.
Really?
The customer service, yeah.
So the risk and compliance is more important to you to do that by not fully AI-powered, basically.
Yes, but also I think when people are interacting with customer service, they want accuracy.
Yeah.
And they want their complaint dealt with far more than they want somebody nice to talk to.
True. Number four, personally approve every single transaction over £10,000 for the next year, or have to explain PSD2 regulations to a room full of high school students once a week.
I'm going with PSD2.
Because you like the educational bit, or?
Yeah, and also I was very heavily involved in PSD2 implementation, so I know it really well.
Nice. Last one, be forced to rebrand ClearBank to Fintechy McBankface, or have to wear a branded mascot costume at every fintech event for the next 2 years.
Oh, I'm going with the branded mascot outfit.
What do you think is the mascot that fits ClearBank the best?
I don't know. But I'm going with some form of animal, because that would be like a unicorn. Oh, I'd love to be a rainbow-coloured unicorn.
Nice. Kind of fits your almost unicorn status?
Yeah, I hope so.
Great. Well, yeah, thanks for that. I think there was a proper warm-up. Some interesting dilemmas in there. Let's maybe to start the conversation, talk a bit about your kind of professional journey, because you've had a kind of interesting route. You started obviously with HBOS. When did you know financial services is my calling?
Not for probably a couple of years in. It definitely wasn't something that was on my agenda when I first got the job at HBOS. But like most people finishing university, I was looking for a graduate development scheme that gave me training and opportunities, and I got a place there. And I think when I got in and when I started to experience what it was really like, and in particular I had an interest in economics, but economics from a practical perspective, and I found that was actually quite a good fit. It was very practical, lots of client interaction, which I really enjoyed, and I was learning a lot. And so I think that was probably about 2-ish years in. I thought, actually, this feels like a really good fit for me in terms of what I enjoy doing and the opportunities to learn. And so I think that was sort of what set me on the path, and it must be right, because about nearly 20 years later, I'm still going.
It sounds like it was more of a coincidence than maybe purposeful decision in that sense? Like if you had another traineeship or kind of development program, then in another industry, then that might have been where you ended up.
Yeah,
No?
probably. I did a law degree, so I had planned on becoming a lawyer, and then I decided not to, and so my sort of career plans had changed completely. But I wasn't quite sure what the right direction was. So yeah, it could have been something else, but I think it worked out pretty well in the end.
Funny, yeah. I mean, if it was the same for me, I actually did a master in finance, and I really wanted to become a trader. I thought just before I started masters, I thought trading was the way to go. I think inspired by the movie Boiler Room, I thought, yes, that's the environment I want to be in. But 1 week into the masters, I kind of found out that maybe it was not for me because I didn't like finance so much and all the Excel sheets and math and statistics that came with it. So yeah, and then I ended up in sales or recruitment one day, and that was purely a coincidence. So yeah, I guess that's it's funny how some of those kind of inflection points in your life can determine where you're going to go to
Yeah,
next.
absolutely.
I mean, I'm not where you are, but I'm 12 years in, but yeah, still in the same industry. So yeah, who knows what would have been if I had chosen a different career or had a different kind of opportunity presented at me at the time. I mean, obviously now you're the CEO of ClearBank UK. I can't imagine that was something. That's not saying that with any sorts of intentions, but I can't imagine that was kind of your dream when you were 5 years old. But when did you know, okay, becoming the CEO of ClearBank UK is an actual purposeful career path that I want to follow?
I think it was. I've never had, I think really in my sort of professional life post university, a sort of a very definitive plan that I was going to stick to. And I think because I always looked at it as opportunities come along, and if you're very fixed in your mindset about what good looks like or what the next step is, you might miss a really great opportunity just because you've closed off your mind to the possibility that there might be something else. And so even the CEO piece probably wasn't an ambition up until probably about 18 months ago. I was far more focused, and I've always been very focused on doing things that I really enjoy. And if the next role up or to the side looks like something I would really enjoy and I could be good at, and the opportunity came along, I've always said yes. And that's sort of how I ended up in the first place in risk, and then in a CRO role. And I think when the CEO opportunity came up at ClearBank, because of the growth of the organisation, it was almost, I'd enjoyed ClearBank so much in the time that I'd been here. I love the business model, I love the people, and I'd enjoyed being the CRO. And I thought, well, why wouldn't I enjoy being the CEO? I'd started my career in kind of more the sales front office side of the house, and so I had experience doing that, and I know I enjoy it. I enjoy the commercial aspect of risk, even in terms of the roles before, and so it felt like a kind of natural next move that I would really enjoy.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, going from sales to risk and then to leading the business, obviously quite different roles, right?
Yeah, very.
Is there any theme in there that you found?
I would say my theme was, for me, on a personal level, was about learning.
Yeah.
Even in the risk, when I was in the risk role, I ended up a little bit in that, again, by sort of happy coincidence / accident, and I just found I enjoyed it. But even while I was doing that role in the early days, because we were in a startup in Silicon Valley Bank within a broader organisation, I was doing lots and lots of different things, because it's a small team and you do a bit of everything when you're in a small team. And so I think that kind of aspect of continuous learning. So you do lots of different things.
Yeah.
And so at various points, I would do things like updating the business plan or reviewing marketing materials, or working with government organisations on various initiatives. And so there was a real variety there, and very much a kind of pitch in and get your hands dirty environment. And that, I think, was the thread that ran through all of it. Every time in all of those roles, a new project came up on the side of the desk, I said yes, I would do that. Every time a new project came up to do on the side of the desk, that in addition to the day job that came up, unless there was a really good reason not to, I said yes. And that meant I kept learning, kept getting exposure to new and different things. And I think that was the thread that ran through it all. And even moving to ClearBank then after Silicon Valley Bank was a lot about I'd really enjoyed my time, and the opportunity came up, and ClearBank was firmly in the innovation space, doing something really new and different. And it was sort of, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
That sounds like a great opportunity to learn, and it sounds like great fun.
It sounds like it's an interesting journey in the sense it's very easy to put people in a mold, right? Once they have done a certain thing, then if I, again, just reflect on kind of the 12 years I've been through, it's very easy to put yourself in a mold after so many years and think this is the only thing I can do, right? So you have limiting beliefs as to what you can do next. Clearly, that wasn't something that has hurt you in any way, because you have kind of adopted and thought it bigger and kind of had that growth mindset, which I think is super impressive. It sounds so simple. Was it simple? Or was it tough as well at times, or were there specific learnings along the way?
Yeah, it was definitely tough at times. I think firstly, it's really easy if you let yourself to talk yourself out of doing something you've never done before. Really easy. And it was every time it was, could I do it? And then you would think, well, I've never done it before. And you would have to go and learn it all from scratch. And a lot of the time in the things I was doing, there wasn't anyone teaching me. It wasn't like I went on a course or someone was telling me how to do it. I was just a little bit thrown in the deep end. And for me, actually, that was a great way of learning. And I didn't get everything right along the way either. But every time it was an opportunity to learn again and think about, what would I do differently next time? How could I make this better? How could I fix something that I hadn't done quite right? And I think that exposure, almost without sort of feeling the fear, feeling a bit uncomfortable and doing it anyway, I think that was something that was really tough at various points. But each time feeling that sense of achievement when you move past that and actually you're kind of feeling, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
I'm getting it right. This is feeling like I've learned something along the way. And I think that was the bit that keeps you going through all those tough times, that kind of mental resilience and the ability to pick yourself up and go again.
We talked a bit about coaching in the kind of preparation call for the podcast. Were there maybe 4 coaches for you? Were there coaches along the way that kind of were able to get you through those periods, or was it always you talking to yourself and kind of having that resilience by nature?
It was probably a bit of a mix. Definitely a lot of it has to come from within, for me, certainly, because I think the only person that can really get you going again is yourself. You have to want to do it. You have to believe you can do it. But I definitely had the benefit of a lot of people along the way who gave me a bit of coaching or gave me a bit of advice, or shared a story with me that helped me see that maybe I wasn't the only one in that position, or even just somebody who would listen to me if I was struggling with something. And all of those people in lots of different small ways help you along the way, but you still have to find it. No one can do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. I think that their advice and guidance has just helped me to figure out how I would solve that particular problem, or what other strategies I could use to deal with a particular situation I was finding difficult.
Yeah. I mean, and now you're leading the business. I think from looking at the fintech industry as a whole, one of the challenges they have is kind of having diversity at the top. Is that something that, I'm sure, is it a topic of discussion often for you, internally and externally?
I think it is, definitely heavily externally, I think. And I was probably a little surprised by, and maybe I shouldn't have been, the reaction to having a female CEO in fintech. And maybe, again, I'd taken it for granted that wasn't such a big deal anymore. But it clearly was. And I think that has promoted quite a lot of conversation externally. And a fair amount internally too. And I think that is net helpful, that it generates conversation. It's probably, as it always would be, a little bit disappointing that it's seen as something that's unusual.
Yeah, exactly. When did you say, I thought it was going to be more normal and it was going to be less topic of discussion to have a female leader in the fintech business. Is that something is that an opinion you have based on how leadership was maybe in your previous employers, or was it because of a development that you saw over the last couple of years that made you think, okay, well, we're there now, we don't have to talk about this anymore? Because I think that's when diversity can be scratched off the agenda, when you don't have to talk about it anymore, because there is enough diversity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's definitely I think definitely part of it has changed a lot over the 20 years I've been in financial services, for sure. And certainly, I think the rise of fintechs and challenger banks and new types of organisation in financial services has helped move the conversation on a lot. Because sort of in starting from something new, the kind of traditional ways of working, the traditional environments, there's been an opportunity to scrap the more traditional and perhaps less helpful ways of working, such as not really being interested in DEI or inclusivity more broadly. And that's probably partly why I thought it was less of a big deal, because you would hope that in newer organisations you have the opportunity to do differently or break new ground, that there isn't that kind of still traditional mindset over what good looks like or what a fintech leader looks like. But clearly a little bit more work to go. And you would hope that in another, hopefully not 20 years, that it won't be a topic of conversation, because it would just be the norm across all aspects of diversity, not just gender.
Yeah. I do feel that having DEI on the agenda, if you look at the last 5 years, I feel it's less on the agenda now. And it's not necessarily because there's enough diversity, but it's because I think it's seen by a lot of companies as more of a luxury. Like when we went through kind of that post-COVID boom, that was when DEI was talked about all the time. There were almost every company, big or small, had some sort of DEI initiative. And now it's not spoken about as much anymore. Is that because you think it's perceived as a luxury, or why do you think that is?
It could well be perceived as a luxury in some environments, and definitely when there was that boom and it was the most popular topic in the world, everyone was definitely on the bandwagon. What you would hope is that DEI isn't necessarily a separate initiative or something you do because somebody's told you to do it or because it's popular at the same time. It's because it's genuinely valuable, business value, important to your employees, important to the market, important to your customers. And so actually it's kind of just part of who you are as an organisation rather than this thing you do to tick some boxes along the way. And so certainly I don't see it as a luxury. I think it's really important and will drive the companies that really take it seriously and don't look at it as tick box exercise, as something that really drives value creation above and beyond that which companies that don't treat it that way will do. I think that hopefully is something we'll see over the next few years as that plays through.
I mean, the benefits are endless, right? Of having diversity in the business, both from a sex point of view, as well as a ethnic point of view, as well as a socioeconomic point of view. How do you make sure that it stays on top of the agenda and is not considered a nice to have? Where that's, again, internally is probably a bit easier, but is it something that you are a big advocate for as well externally?
Yeah, as much as anyone wants me to be. Let's put it that way. If people are interested in hearing from me, then I am always more than happy to lend my support, do what I can to help. Certainly with my role and within the organisation, it's still something that's really important to me, advocating for. And I think that inclusivity part is also particularly important. You want lots of diverse perspectives around the table because it helps you make better decisions. It helps you get the person in the room that thinks differently to you, and they'll come up with a better idea or a challenge that you need to overcome to help make your goals or objectives successful. All of that is really important because it helps you get better results, and it helps people to feel like that's an organisation they want to belong to, and they feel like they belong to. So whatever I can do as an advocate internally or externally, I will. And whether that's being parts of organisations like Women in Finance and Progress Together for different forms of diversity, whether it's, as I am today, the co-exec sponsor for DEI at ClearBank, whether that's mentoring people, it's roundtable, whatever it is I can do to help, I'm in it for the long haul. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that mentoring, I think is interesting. Can you talk a bit more about who you mentor and why you mentor those? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people who reach out to you to say they want to be mentored by someone like you, who's so achieved over 20 years now, being the CEO of a well-known fintech. Are there specific topics that you mentor on? I think is the first part of the question. The second part of the question, is there specific people that you say yes or no to? Like, is there a profile that you like to mentor more than others, without being negative, of course? Sure. I pretty much I have never really said no, and I think that's because it takes quite a lot for somebody to reach out to you to think, hey, I would like to be mentored by you, and so I will always have an initial conversation. I think it's definitely not profile specific. It does tend to be more women than men, probably for obvious reasons. But I think it's also what are they looking for out of that mentoring relationship? What is it they want help with, and is it something I can help them with? Because if it's not, then it might be that I can help them find someone who can help them with it, or who would be a better fit for them as a mentor because they've been through the same journey, and they can help them with their experience. So it's really about what somebody wants out of the relationship, how I can help them, and whether I'm best placed to do that. But if all of those things are good, then I will more than happily spend time doing it.
From the people that you do mentor, do you see that they've been through a similar trajectory as you and had similar challenges, or is it so many people, so many different experiences?
I found it's pretty broad so far. I think probably the thematic is people who are looking to move up in their career who don't quite know how to develop that next set of skills in order to make them successful in that next opportunity they go for. And that might be things like how are they seen as more strategic? How do they make their voice heard in a really noisy room? How do they increase their profile? And it's typically kind of those thematics where people are looking very specifically to develop their career upwards, and they're struggling with what does that look like? What do I need to work on? And how do I then develop those skills or that technical knowledge to be able to get there?
So is it a lot about perception then of how they are perceived? Like you said, in a loud room, being heard is a perception. And some of the other things you mentioned as well. Is it very perception driven that they want to be seen as differently than they actually are?
A lot is perception. Some of it's just the way of thinking through a challenge. So it's that kind of transition from I'll call it deep technical expert, an SME in their area, to more of a strategic general leader with a functional expertise. And that's always quite a difficult transition to make, I think, when you got promoted to a point because you're really, really technically good at your job and people value that enormously. But as you get more senior, the technical aspects, your technical competency is less of a driver to promotion than leadership skills and strategic thinking and profile and other kind of, I'll call it non-technical attributes that people are looking for. And it almost feels like when you're in your career that you hit a little bit of a ceiling and you don't quite know how to make that next jump up. And that's quite often where I spend time with people who don't quite know how to make that transition to that next stage, and they're looking for a little bit of help or guidance or tips.
Is that ability to step away, maybe look at the bigger picture rather than being solely hands-on, even though you enjoy your job so much. If you want to make that kind of leap to the next stage, then the kind of trick, if you will, is to take a step back, look at the bigger picture and put trust in other people.
Yep, and be able to influence, manage stakeholders appropriately, communicate at kind of far more strategic levels. So it's lots of different bits and pieces, ingredients that go into the mix of that. And that's typically the things that you don't get the same exposure to at those kind of more junior roles, but you have to have them in order to get access to kind of more senior roles as you go through your career.
That's that mentorship one-to-one. But I feel there's a kind of red thread there in terms of mentorship from ClearBank as well to more scale-up community.
Yeah, I think so. But there's always the challenge with all of these things is there's always more than you have time to do. And so it's about working out how can we, ClearBank, and people as an individual be most effective. But I think ClearBank, certainly from my perspective, has a very strong kind of coaching, mentoring, people development focus. And I think that is enormously helpful. And we spend quite a lot of time as an organisation advocating for the broader fintech community in order to help others along the way too.
Because I think it was back in October, right? Together with Zilch and with Revolut, you went to the London Minister to talk about the stamp duty tax and for people actually listing on the London Stock Exchange, kind of for scale-ups to be based here because it is a big portion of the economy. I think in the UK and in London, specifically fintech accounts for a huge portion. That was back in October. Has there been developments on that since? Like, how was that received at the time?
I think it was received well because it comes from the community and it's in the UK's interest for those things, particularly making and keeping London as an attractive listing location.
Yeah.
It's in our interest for that to happen. We continue, there's a vast array of topics that we're continuing to advocate for. So things like more support for fintechs after the startup stage, so they get the same level of engagement, particularly from the FCA, as they kind of go through that scale-up journey. So how do we turn lots of great startups into really big scale-ups? And again, hopefully then one day to list in London. How do we make sure things like MREL requirements that bite for scale-up companies and fintechs in particular, how do we make sure those stay proportionate and don't act as a constraint to growth? So it's really kind of advocating across a number of different policy topics, all the way from kind of startup to big unicorns or big listing opportunities, and how can we help play an active part in developing kind of that whole fintech journey so that others are successful as well.
And where did that come from? Why was that important for ClearBank to do? Because, I mean, there's a lot to focus on as well from a business point of view, right? For ClearBank, there's a lot of exciting stuff you guys are developing, building, have been doing so over the last couple of years. Why is it so important to you to also take a role in kind of the broader fintech community?
I think for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we're on that journey too.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a part where we're experiencing things. We can see how that might be challenging for others along the way, but we're also on that journey with them. So we're part of it too. But also because ClearBank focuses primarily on working with other fintechs and financial institutions through our clearing and embedded banking, we have a vested interest in making sure that the UK fintech environment and community remains active and continues to grow. And I think that as a whole, in terms of providing great competition to the incumbents and creating kind of more job opportunities in the market and contributing positively to the UK economy, that's a really UK fintech is a really important part of that. And so again, that's why it's a focus for us, because we want that to continue to be true in the years to come.
Makes sense. Yeah. No, I think it's great you take that leadership role within that, especially to make sure that the UK fintech community keeps thriving, especially after Brexit, although it didn't seem to have been hit so much in that sense. But I think that there's a lot of kind of macroeconomic things in play that could have an impact on whether that's the UK fintech community or the Dutch or whichever one it is. But yeah, I think it's important that companies like ClearBank take a lead in that. So I think that's really cool. If you look ahead then with regards to ClearBank itself, what are you working on right now that you're excited about? You obviously just opened up in Amsterdam. You got a banking license with the DNB. What's next?
Yeah, so we're pretty excited about the European expansion. It's still relatively early days, but one of the things that we did, and we always do, is listen to our customers in terms of what they want from ClearBank. How can we help them? And the access to the European payment schemes and kind of replicating our business model in Europe was something we heard loud and clear. And we believe there's a big opportunity for that. So we are still very heavily involved in trying to roll out our kind of full product set and business model in Europe, both for the benefit of the UK customers that are in Europe and also for the European markets. So that's a really big focus for us from a UK perspective as well, given the connectivity between the two markets. I think the other things that we're really excited about, particularly this year, is embedded banking. We just see a lot of demand for in terms of, and for us, embedded banking means working typically with another payment firm or fintech to embed financial services products, i.e. bank accounts, into their front-end user experience. So kind of bringing the best of both worlds, great user experience, broad product suites, but with the safety, scalability, resiliency, and all the functionality of a bank account. And we've seen a huge demand for that. So that's definitely exciting because we pretty much one of the biggest providers in the UK for that at the moment. And that market only started kind of a few years ago, really. And so that's super exciting. We're also heavily focused on how can we then take that embedded banking proposition and bring that to the corporate space. And again, because of the problems or challenges and friction that solves for, we see a big opportunity in the corporate space. So in the non-regulated financial institutions, to have a very similar proposition that again will help those corporates in terms of their overall strategy and objectives, but also benefit and build on the experience we've had to date. And I think the last piece that we're quite excited about is we've been working a lot on kind of digital asset space. So again, if we take what we do from a fiat perspective, what might the opportunities be from a digital perspective in the same proposition? So whether that's engaging with regulators, central banks, government on CBDCs or tokenization or stable coins, that's something we're really interested in as a potential kind of future innovation for the market. And obviously that's pretty much what ClearBank does, is innovation. And so that's something we're spending a lot of time on too.
Do you feel that for those opportunities, that what you have experienced here in the UK is going to be different in Europe in terms of the landscape and the infrastructure that is there? Do you feel there's do you feel a very similar type of ecosystem and environment, or do you think that Europe will be significantly different from the UK? So for example, UK is well advanced with certain technologies. The first that springs to mind is open banking. It's way more developed here than it is in Europe. Embedded banking, is it the same for that? Is it for opportunities with kind of innovation and with digital assets and all? Is it more developed here than in Europe, or the other way around, or is it very similar? How do you look at that?
I think each piece is different, and I think we look quite a lot when we're thinking about, okay, what's next, and looking at the relative kind of development in the market and maturity. So is it something that's new, and therefore we've got to do a lot of work in terms of kind of educating and working with the market on the benefit to that, or is it something that's actually already embedded? So if you looked at things like digital assets in Europe with the MiCA regulations, there's far more of a developed regulatory infrastructure to work in as compared to, say, the UK. So that's both a benefit and a kind of downside or opportunity. In the UK, that means we've got a lot more work to do to help frame something up that provides a structure for us and others to work in. Whereas in Europe, it's already developed and people are already active in the market. So there's an opportunity too, because you could potentially go faster. So it works both ways. I think there's definitely other embedded banking players in the European market, because obviously we're a few years on from when that really started. And that again is both an opportunity for ClearBank and also potentially a downside because we're not ahead of the market as much. But it really does vary. I think for us, it's just Europe as a whole. For a European bank, that's just a big opportunity for us. But even within Europe, obviously, each market is different too. So we have to look at each market individually rather than taking it just as kind of one homogenous set.
Yeah, and you have some customers who are obviously not just UK based, but also have Europe or maybe even a global reach, right? Take Revolut as an example. We do the savings account for, so I'm sure you can grow with your customers as well instead of having to kind of reinvent the wheel and to onboard new customers. In those kind of, so you talked about PSPs, financial institutions, and corporates, so non-regulated financial institutions or non-regulated businesses. In those three customer classes, where do you think the opportunity is still the biggest, or where is the biggest out of those three you feel right now?
I think the biggest untapped opportunity is corporate, just because there's not a lot happening there at the moment, because it's relatively new. There is some activity, and we know obviously lots of people are thinking about that. It's a great opportunity, and there's a lot of talk about embedded banking and embedded finance more broadly. It's about how do you bring that to market into a proposition. I think the embedded banking space on the FI is kind of a developing market in terms of there's definitely some traction there. We see that through the demand coming in, as well as business we've already done and that's active in the market. So I think that one is still lots of growth opportunity that's untapped, but we now have a kind of fairly well understood way of working in that space effectively with partners. And I think agency for us, the clearing side of the house, it's an absolutely essential infrastructure service that we're providing to the market in competition with the incumbents in the UK. And so just because the new providers in that market, the fintechs that are getting authorised, the other banks that are not direct participants, want access to cloud-based API-led technology, and there still isn't a lot of providers that are able to do that. that kind of remains for us a relatively mature market, but one that's still really important to us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that corporate kind of opportunity, because that's where I think you blend in a financial with a non-financial product, and it's less obvious, but that's why probably the opportunity is so big as well. So yeah, that's very exciting. Great, Emma. To round it off, maybe going back to you, if you look back over your career, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received when it comes to leading in fintech, whether that was a business or a department or a team or anything like that?
I think the best piece of advice I've received is about transparency and being authentic. I think it's very easy. I think people value that a lot. The people that work for you value it a lot. I think external parties value it a lot. And whether that's a difficult message or a really great one, I think the being really authentic to who you are and also being transparent with people drives a lot of trust, and trust creates opportunity, value creation.
Yeah, and I think that authenticity probably is the most difficult to show when you have a difficult message to deliver. Mm-hmm. Because in good times, everyone's your friend. And in bad times, obviously, that's when the true self comes out of both parties. Yeah. But yeah, no, fully agree. Great, Emma. Thank you for being on the show. Great to hear your insights. And yeah, you've been through a tremendous journey over these past 20 years. I'm not sure if you know what's next, but I'm looking forward to see what's next for you after this.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to In Check with Fintech. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform or just drop a comment on YouTube. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe as well and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. As we wrap up this episode, we challenge you to think about how you can stay ahead in this ever-evolving industry. Whether you're a passionate fintech professional or just generally curious about fintech, there's always something new to learn and explore. Let us help you stay up to date with all things fintech by tuning in to our episodes.